The Tony Farina Report is brought to you by West Her Automotive. West Her cares. And Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel off exit 48 in the New York State Thruway. BataviaDownsGaming.com.
Well, hello all, and welcome to the Tony Farina Report on the Big Picture Show with Judge Penny Wolfgang. And we're joined today, very happily so, with a dear old friend and the Buffalo News longtime political reporter who just recently retired, Bob McCarthy.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Great to see you, Bob, and I'm sorry to see you retire, but you've had a stellar career. How long were you took over from our dear friend George Borelli?
Right.
What year was that now?
That was 1992.
Yes.
And
30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've been the political writer at the Buffalo News ever since.
There's been a few stories that I've written about, over that time. Right.
And they even bounced you around to some other things too.
Yeah, which was always fun too.
Yeah. So now you've decided to join the ranks of the retired after a wonderful and award-winning career. How does it feel now that you're no longer tuned into local? Well, I'm sure you still are, but you're not involved like you were in what's going on, and there's a lot going on.
It's one of the most frustrating feelings anyone could possibly have.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I were just talking about some local politics a few minutes ago, and it makes me want to get on the phone and start talking so people find out the real story. But Charlie Specht is the new political reporter at the News.
Oh, Charlie's been officially designated?
Yeah, and he'll be the guy who's taking over for me, and he'll do a good job on those exact same things. Yeah.
I'm sure he will.
But I do miss it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and of course, our show is going to air. Our report's going to air the weekend of the St. Patrick's Day celebration at the St. Patrick's Day the club on.
Well, they have the luncheon on Friday at the Irish Center.
At the Irish Center.
Which is one of the great amalgams of politicians everywhere. And Tony, was always one of my great days for being a reporter because the place was crawling with politicians and they were all drinking and talking.
They were talking and drinking. I'll tell you, it was
one of the great days. I'd come out with about 5 or 6 tips in my notebook.
Absolutely, yeah. Those were the days, Bob, when I don't know what it's going to be like this year. A lot of people that we covered and knew are no longer around, but some are.
Oh yeah, but there's all kinds of people coming on the scene, and that's one of the nice things about that event is that people who are breaking into politics will go there to network and to talk with people and to kind of see and be seen. So it's always that, and it's no different from a lot of other occasions that are around the area also. But that one in particular, because there's a real political presence at that one, and the governor sometimes, and always Controller Tom DiNapoli. And
he comes there
every year. Yeah.
And just a week or so ago, I had an occasion to be at a celebration in Erie County to honor one of Erie County's best politicians, Tom Reynolds.
Right.
And of all the guys I covered, of all the politicians I covered, I would say Tom might have been the best. He was as good as they come. And he was
right there.
He was on his game at Niagara County at the Niagara Falls Country Club. He's still very much involved in advising everybody. And he knew their jobs, how many votes they got. He dialed it up like nothing.
He's real good at that.
He's very good.
He's real good at that.
And the last time you were together with me and him was the Cook Fair celebration at Mother's.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
which was an event in itself.
Yes.
An awful lot of good stories floating around that day.
Speaking of political figures, there was one, the late Jack Cook Fair, a political consultant who we both knew very well. And we miss him dearly, that's for sure.
That's for sure. Yeah, he was the best. He
was. And
a lot of fun, too.
Jack could come up with a line out of nowhere, and he was good. When Dennis Vacco decided to run for Attorney General back in 1992, Jack Cook Fair was the first call. And we met at the old Pilot Field lunchroom, and I had time off between TV gigs. Jack wanted me to work with Dennis, and the deal was cut right there. And he went on to become Attorney General. And Jack set up all the meetings across the state with all the Republican chairmen as only he could do. He was a colorful figure for sure.
Yeah.
What's your best memory of Jack, Bob, do you think?
The night a bunch of us were sitting around Rosie O'Boyle's.
I was there.
In Rosie O'Grady's,
across the street from the convention center.
Rosie O'Grady's in New York, and
that was terrific.
And just kind of drinking in the whole, and I don't mean that literally, but a little bit, but just drinking in the whole flavor of a statewide campaign, and watching him in action, and it was just, he was fun to watch.
Yes, he was. He got mugged the next day.
Yeah.
But
and he wrote a novel one time too about politics in New York State, and he had me read the manuscript, and a lot of people that you and I would recognize are characters in this novel.
I'm sure they are. I remember my dear friend Mike Kelly one time was going to take a boat trip with Jack, Mike and his wife Ellen. And well, Jack was going to take a boat trip with Mike and Ellen, that's what it was, and down the canal. And they got about half a day out, and Jack said, "Pull over, I want to get off. This boat's going to sink." It was loaded with beer. So he got off the boat, and Mike and Ellen went on their way. There's another departed friend, Mike Kelly,
I know you were very close
from
with
the AG's
him.
office and the district attorney's office. So what are you doing with yourself now that you're not writing every day like you were for 30 plus years?
Well, to be honest with you, today I just spent the day making a list of all the people who had contacted me, wishing me the best, and I had a long list of people who were calling and writing and sending cards, and I just am trying to get back to all these folks and thanking them for all the nice wishes that I've had on my departure.
I know there's a good deal of concern in the community and at the news, Buffalo News, about the future of the paper. It talks about printing in Cleveland, the Cleveland Press. That's going to change deadlines if it happens. And the red ink that Lee, what's the name of it?
Lee Enterprises.
Lee Enterprises is experiencing right now. What's the future look like, Bob, at the Buffalo News?
Well, I think a lot of people, Tony, are comparing the state of the business today to the good old days, to the golden days when, you know, the news sold 325,000 copies a day and 400 on Sunday. Those days are gone because the world has changed. And I'm sad about that. But there's a lot of good things that the news has been able to do and the newspaper business has been able to do via the internet, and just the ability to break something quickly and not have to wait for the next morning's paper, or the ability to include video and other interactive features is a good thing. And that's where it'll be at some point, someday. But, you know, I always tell people, remember, compare this paper to peer cities and understand that this is still a really good paper compared to a lot of other papers. And it still sets the agenda for news coverage in Western New York, and it still has the largest news gathering staff in all of upstate New York. So
even though it's far down from what it was.
Well, yeah, but everything is relative.
Yeah.
And I'm not dismissing for a second all of the concerns that you just brought up, and things are different, but it's all relative too, and
well, you
it's
know,
still a pretty good deal.
In my youth, when I was at the Courier Express, and we competed against the Buffalo News, and it was a great newspaper town, Buffalo. We had 2 thriving daily newspapers, and then there was one, the Courier went down. I had gone to TV by then, but of course I shared the pain of the Courier demise. Sure. And then there was one left, and now, as you say, the whole industry has changed significantly, but you know, I guess because I grew up in newspapers, as you did, I like to have a newspaper in my hands in the morning. I can't have a cup of coffee in the morning without a newspaper.
And you're so right, but our kids aren't like that.
No, they're not. And a lot of times
they're looking at their phone, and we give them something on the phone, but people don't have time for that, really. I always thought it was great in the newspaper business because you were supposed to read the papers.
Yeah, that was the joy of it.
Yeah.
That was the joy of it. So, Bob, what do you got planned now for the future?
We'll see.
You're still a young man.
We'll
You
see
got
what
a long
happens.
ways
I
to
would
go.
love to be involved in something, Tony, and we'll see what happens. I'm talking to people here and there, but would love to really keep my fingers in it. And look, this is what I do. It's what I've always done, and it was very difficult for me to pry myself away from it. But it was, there was a buyout offer involved and everything, and I kind of had to do it.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't want to see any of our younger folks getting laid off or anything either. So it was unplanned for me, and I'm still going, adjusting from going from 100 miles an hour to
Go
zero.
through a withdrawal.
Yeah. But bunking in the morning isn't bad either. So.
Well, one last before we wrap up here. You took over for my dear friend and your dear friend, George Borelli, who was, like you, a terrific columnist. And George is still with us, thank God. He's still around.
As a matter of fact, this week, Charlie Speck, the new political reporter, and George and I are going to have lunch. And so watch your Facebook and Twitter feeds for some interesting pictures of the 3 political reporters of the Buffalo News over the last 60 years.
Feel free to invite me, by the way. I'd love to join that group. You're a dear friend, and George, of course, I was very close to George for so many years.
Yeah.
Bob McCarthy.
All right, Tony, always a pleasure, my friend.
All the best.
Very good.
You had a terrific career as a journalist. And
I had a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Political writer, and
best time.
You're going to be missed.
Thanks.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Tony and Bob McCarthy. In addition to all the St. Patrick's Day celebrations, March 19th is also the feast day for another religious figure. Recently, the Lake Erie Italian Club in Lackawanna hosted a special St. Joseph's Day lunch catered by Anything's Pastivo to raise money for St. Luke's Center and other charities. As folklore would have it, many years ago in Sicily, the wealthy land barons would open their homes to the poor once a year for a free meal and would send delicious bread and oranges home with them. Later, it was made a meatless celebration to aid the struggling fishermen as well. As we end this edition of The Big Picture, we leave you with the sights and sounds of the Buffalo St. Patrick's Day Parade. I'm Judge Penny Wolfgang. Thanks for watching The Big Picture, and thanks for watching WBBZ-TV.